What's up, everybody? Little daytime online stream. Don't worry, I'll still be back at 9 o'clock tonight. But I decided I needed to talk a little Eagles football. And to do that, and this has never happened before in the history of the world. But many people that listen to me on the radio, whenever I did a show with Tommy Kelly, TK, there was two graduates of Upper Moreland High School on the same radio show, which is like, what's the odds of that, right? Same odds that the first lady of the United States, Jill Biden, she went to Upper Moreland. But still, two radio people on the air at the same time went to Upper Moreland High School. Now I'm bringing on a guest, and he's excellent. I've been reading him for years. He's the managing editor of the Eagles Wire and the Ravens Wire. That's for USA Today. And I don't think he sleeps. If anything happens with the Eagles, you can be sure that Glenn Erby is the one that's on top of it first. And he joins us right now, not only a graduate of Upper Moreland High School, the same graduating class as me. We went to school together. What's up, Herb?
My guy, dream come true, finally.
I shouldn't have graduated with you. I redshirted my junior year. So that was my fifth year in high school. You may not remember that, but nevertheless.
No, I mean, if we're being transparent, I failed the ninth grade, so we both had 5 years in high school, so it's good.
And by the way, when I worked with Ike, he spent 5 years in high school too. So we had the most experience of high school radio hosts in the history of radio. We had 10 years between the two of us. So right now there's 10 years of high school experience between us. It's tough to beat, man.
Definitely helped with the maturation process, so I'm not bad.
All right, so let's start with what happened today.
Okay.
The Eagles finally named their coaching staff. It became official. We knew that Fangio, and we knew exactly, but some position coaches, some guys are coming back, some guys are leaving. Glenn, what's your takeaway with what the Eagles have done, big picture, with their coaching staff under Nick Sirianni for 2024?
I mean, it's an excellent staff. I think, it takes us back to 2 years ago when he first got Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. So at this point, we'll spend the next year listening to people talk about how it's his assistant coaches and it's not him. So he's set up somewhat for failure if things don't go right because you have multiple replacements on the staff. But in terms of having a core staff, having guys that know what they're doing, he couldn't be set up for a better 2024.
Yeah, and part of the worries that nobody had because they were coming off a Super Bowl, but doing talk radio, I almost have to come up with worries. Everything can't be great. So it's like, all right, like what possibly could go wrong with the Eagles? And one of the things was the lack of experience at the coordinators, right? Between offense and defense, both. So Sean Desai had been a defensive coordinator before, but it was only for a year.
Right.
And then a coaching staff and a regime change, and he had to go be an assistant coach up in Seattle. And then Brian Johnson, you would have thought would have been maybe an easier, he slides right in, familiar with the offense, relationship with Jalen Hurts. And then by 3 quarters into the season, you realize that the lack of experience with the coordinators was hurting the football team. Now, Glenn, you have real experience between Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, who also has head coaching experience. How much of a difference do you believe that will help Nick Sirianni as he has really moved away from being a hands-on offensive coach to being a true CEO head coach?
I think it'll be an immense situation. I think, like you talked about Steichen, you have, especially on offense, you have a guy in Kellen Moore who he'll have Hurts under center. One of the biggest complaints we get is watching them sit back in the shotgun every down, play after play, unless it's the tush push. Now he'll get under center. You'll have motion. You'll have multiple tight ends. You'll have multiple guys getting the ball. You'll have running backs, being active in the passing game. So you'll have different situations, and then you'll be able to now, especially on offense, adjust, get away from what, Sirianni labeled a stale offensive system to one where you have more vertical routes, you have more deep passing routes, things that he necessarily didn't do well last year, but he did impeccably well under Shane Steichen for 2 seasons.
Yeah, like how I think everybody still is struggling to figure out exactly what happened and what went wrong. And now you hear a lot about these locker room issues and off the field issues, which, Glenn, I've been saying all along. You don't go from 10-1 and being the toast of the NFL, coming off a Super Bowl year, and get blown out by the Bucs, lose the games that you lost down the stretch, get blown out by the Bucs in the playoffs, unless there's something that's broken in the locker room. We heard the Craig Carton, I don't even want to call it a report, but we heard with Craig Carton that Howard Eskin came out and he mentioned Fletcher Cox by name and said some veteran players in the locker room had issues with Jalen Hurts and how he was carrying himself on the sideline, not even really on the field. How serious of an issue do you think this is? Because Fletcher Cox can just not come back, but that doesn't mean, forget about Fletcher Cox and some other veterans. If those guys felt a certain way about Jalen, I can guarantee you other teammates felt a certain way about Jalen, but just didn't have the cachet to actually say something to him. How big of a problem do you think that this potentially was last year, and how much do you think it could be going forward?
I think it was a big problem last year. I don't think it'll be a big problem going forward. I think we have to remember that we're all human. You know, how many of us change when we get money? How many of us change when we get a little famous? So you're talking about a guy who was a second-round pick in 2020, essentially an afterthought, was supposed to be a career backup. Next thing you know, the implosion of Wentz happens. He becomes a starter. He builds himself up to, getting that super contract, and now expectations come. So I think what you have is in any locker room, you're going to have veteran guys saying, "Hey, we need you to do this. Great, you're this quiet guy. You're not the monster stiff, but now you make $51 million a year. So you're essentially the CEO to the CEO, which is the coach. So you have to, short of, besides just breaking down the huddle and doing other things, people expect to hear from you. People expect you to have an opinion on things. And I think that's all it was. I don't think it was that serious. I don't think anyone's girlfriend was stolen or anything, that Canton was trying to explain. I think it's just him needing to mature. And I think he said that in his exit interview, there are things that I need to work on with my personality and how I lead this team.
Yeah. And like, I would look at it and say, you know what? We've seen this happen 1,000 times before in athletics where guys get the big contract. So like you had said, Glenn, he goes from being, hey, I don't know if he's a starting quarterback in this league, to being a near MVP, to almost winning a Super Bowl. He outplayed Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. He had the one fumble, which really was a huge miscue, but still. So he goes from being, we don't know if he's a starting quarterback, to big contract, top 5 elite quarterback. And there's expectations with that. Now he's doing commercials, he's doing TV, he's doing movies, and he comes in, and everybody thought it was cool how serious he was on the sideline and how he was so free. They called it focused on the sideline during games. The minute they start to lose, then it becomes a problem, right? So, I mean, I'll say this, that, and Joe Mauer has a comment up there that says, wouldn't you describe Hurts as aloof as opposed to intense? I would just say that knowing that players felt a certain way about it, and Jalen's first reaction may have been, but that's not really what I was intending to do, or that's not really where I was. Like, I feel like as the quarterback, I have to be focused and I have whatever. I don't look at it as this is a learning experience for Jalen, and I think he is going to learn a lot from it, because no one's ever described Jalen as a bad teammate or a bad guy. These guys respect the hell out of him. And I didn't feel like that with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, he definitely felt like that he was separate from a lot of the team, and that was because of his personality and just the kind of guy that he was. Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, the bigger issue for me last year with Jalen Hurts was the offense. And the fact that once the league said, hey, if we blitz them, they don't really have an answer for it. The coaching staff didn't have an answer. Nick Sirianni didn't have an answer. Brian Johnson didn't have an answer. And Jalen, frankly, didn't have an answer. So Kellen Moore, in my opinion, is going to be, I almost feel like that people are sleeping on how good of a hire Kellen Moore and his experience as a play caller will be for this team.
No, I think it's an excellent hire. I think you saw yesterday, how Roseman brings back the tight end from the Broncos that sat all last season. He even, Albert didn't play even when Goddard missed games. So I think it's a situation where he'll be able to get him involved. He'll be able to get Grant Calcaterra involved. He'll have guys running different routes. We don't know anything about a slot receiver last year because we didn't use one. It was either a bubble screen or a deep passing route. Now you'll have, more downfield action. You'll have more out routes. You'll have more crossing routes. You'll just have a different situation going on, and it's not a bad thing. You'll have, you had a Rashad Penny, a solid running back, spent the whole year inactive. That can't happen. That's an inexperienced and an offensive coordinator when what's the worst he'll do is get 4 or 5 yards. So I think you'll see a situation where he uses his whole roster, he uses everything that he has at his disposal, and you'll see an improved Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, so I guess Peter King was he on WIP this morning? Wherever this morning he called Jalen aloof. Now, like what I was saying was, if you want to describe him as aloof, okay, and maybe some of his teammates felt like that he wasn't approachable
Right.
and he was distant. I don't know, but what I would say is that I don't think Jalen intended to be like that to his teammates. It may have ended up coming off like that to teammates, and if Fletcher Cox had a problem with it, I'm assuming it was because of that. But it's an opportunity for Jalen to learn from it.
I think we've all played a sport, regardless if it was a professional sport. There's a hierarchy and everything. So you go from, as a freshman, you're in varsity, maybe you're quiet. As a sophomore, this could even be college. As a sophomore at Alabama, maybe you didn't say so much. By the time you become a senior, by the time you get to Oklahoma, you're expected to say more. You're expected to do more. So now you have a situation where guys are watching you sign with Jordan Brand. They're watching you do other things. And then now you're not able to, whether it be Brian Johnson or you, not pick up a blitz properly. That's going to be discussed in the locker room. You sitting there last year when they were winning, it was great to see him sit on the sideline while everybody's showing emotion. That can't be the same thing going into year 4. It can't be the same thing going into year 5. And I think he's figured that out. Now, the locker room may have turned on him some, not to cut you off, not fully like Carson Wentz, but I think he had his welcome to the NFL moment, his big boy moment.
That's a great way to put it. You're right. Yeah, like everything last year, and I'm talking about 2022 now, had went right. Like everything was working out. The roster was working out. The offense was working out. That Jalen was leaps and bounds improved as a passer. And it seemed like last year, and I really think that Jalen, and we can debate how injured he was. Was he significantly injured? Did it affect the way that he played? I believe Jalen was trying to take that next step in being a quarterback because he had showed, especially at the end of 2022, he'll beat you with his arm. He doesn't necessarily you don't need him a big part of the running game. That's a bonus.
Right.
But it felt like last year, the last third of the season, the last quarter of the season, the minute he started feeling pressure, like he felt pressure all the time. Even if it wasn't there, he was sensing it. He got skittish in the pocket. He wasn't stepping up. So again, hopefully these are coaching points from the new coaching staff, the new offensive coaches, because if this team's going to be an elite NFL team, which we'll talk about in a second, Jalen's got to get back to being the Jalen we saw 2 years ago.
Correct. And that's less commercials. That's okay. You have your welcome to, being that superstar moment. You spent the summer doing whatever you do. So now it's getting back to what you did 2 summers ago, which is retooling your throwing mechanics, figuring out why he struggles or he takes that extra second to see the extra defender coming and all those things that he can correct manually.
Do you still view the Eagles? And Glenn, it's a difficult question to answer because the draft hasn't happened. Free agency hasn't happened. And we've seen Howie Roseman. He actually thrives at this where he's not looking to do, say, all right, well, we'll take a step back this year. And in 2 years, we hope to be back where we were last year. He has a real knack for quickly taking this roster and really changing it over with significant turnover and getting them right back into competition. Knowing Howie's MO and the success that he's had, and knowing where the roster currently stands in free agency and the draft, is this a team that we should expect to be at the top of the NFC once again in 2024?
Without a doubt, I think he's done a good job of building a solid culture. You bring in the Georgia guys, you got Alabama guys, so you have guys on that team that are used to winning. I think like he did a couple years ago when he stopped taking chances on guys and he just focused on the eye test and saying, okay, that guy's really good. I got to get Jalen Carter or I got to get that guy. He now has to stop playing around and start respecting the linebacker position. It's a good team. It's a solid roster, but you're not going to beat anyone. And people are going to expose the Eagles when they have mediocre linebackers and he doesn't take the safety position and those type of things. So when he starts to move away from that and he gets a good solid inside linebacker to go with everything else he has, they'll get back to doing what they do.
Dude, we've seen the Eagles. The Eagles will change, right? Like they're not stuck in their old ways. Howie, one of the things that I think he does really well is he does adapt to things that they struggle with, right? Is this going to be a case where they're going to say, hey, we actually are. We're not going to spend the most money at the linebacker position in the NFL, but when you look at some of the other teams, when you look at San Francisco, when you look at teams that have real team defensive speed and playmakers, a lot of times that's coming from the linebacker position. Do you think that Howie is going to go in the free agency and the draft, placing a higher priority on the linebacker position, or is this just the defense and this is the way that they're set up and this is what you expect them to do?
He can't. I mean, I think he has to. He has to change because you now have Fangio. You have all these big names on the defensive staff. If they continue to come out and get gashed, and the same things continue to happen, it's going to now trickle down to him. Like you can sit here and talk about, okay, well, he drafted Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis is pretty good. He didn't draft Kyle Hamilton. He didn't draft Brent from the Lions. So as you sit, you continue to watch great safeties, or you watch Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, you watch the 49ers and their linebacker crew. You continue to watch all these teams that, one, have linebackers that give your offense problems, and then two, you turn around and watch your defense not be able to respond because you don't have the athletic or field side to side, sideline to sideline linebacker. At some point, that's going to start to become you. Great. Nicholas Moreau was a great story, but there was a reason you didn't guarantee his contract last year.
Yep. Yeah, there's a reason why he wasn't on a roster when the season started. You mentioned Kyle Hamilton. It's a great name because any game that I watched of the Ravens, which was, I watched a lot of Ravens, and I know you also cover the Ravens for USA Today. And he slid. He was considered a top 10 talent when he came out in that draft, and he slid probably because of the position more than anything and the value of the position. But when you watch him play, you see speed, you see athleticism, you see power, you see violent hits, you see coverage ability, and you don't see anybody like that on the Eagles defense. Their defensive line, obviously, they almost always have good defensive lines. Outside of that, they don't have the playmakers. I know Slay's a good corner, and we'll talk about him in a second, but it'd be nice to have a playmaker that can do a little bit of everything out there.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think the same nightmares we have when we watch Justin Jefferson play for a different team, you should have watching Kyle Hamilton like he does 4 different things for the Ravens. So even if you say, well, okay, I don't want to give that much money to a safety, he still can play deep safety. He'll still play in the slot. He'll still rush the passer. You could do 8 different things. So when you start to talk about guys that are that good, sometimes, again, it's just the eye test. And Baltimore does a good job of taking the best player and then fitting him in when you need to.
So what does Howie do now? Because especially they're going to need as many players as they're going to need just on defense to try to make them better. Is Slay definitely back? I know that the story was out there about Bradbury that he can go seek a trade. All right, well, good luck having a team. I mean, the Giants tried to trade him and people weren't interested and he was coming off being a Pro Bowler. How many new members of the defense are we looking at starting the secondary? It was a shame Sidney Brown went down with the torn ACL late in the season. Man, he showed so much promise and he looked really good. I assume Blankenship's going to be the starter. He looked pretty good last year. But do you think Slay is back? Do you think Bradbury's back? And what does that mean for the secondary?
I think Slay comes back. He's due $9 million in a week or so. I don't see why he wouldn't get that. You can't necessarily, if you cut Bradbury, you get no cap savings from him. If you cut him, that's a dead cap. So at that point, you just want him gone, which I can understand. I have no problem with Keely Ringo. I have no problem with Eli Ricks in the roster. You can get rid of Kevin Byard. You get $13 million from that. So I think in terms of the defense, I have no problem with them bringing everyone that's on that roster back, but that cap space you have, I think with the salary cap rising today to 255, that's an extra $14 million. So now you're sitting at 32 before you even restructure or cut. You have to sign a free agent, linebacker, safety, or draft 2 really impactful safeties and linebackers. Everything else can stay and they can be solid on defense because of Fangio and the new DB coach and things like that. But you have to get a talented linebacker, a game changer, and you need a game changer at safety.
And you heard Glenn mention it. The salary cap goes up $30.6 million. $255.4 million is what it goes up to. That is the most that it's ever went up. And it's a sign, Glenn, of how much money the league is making. It's based on the salary cap goes up based on how much money the league's making. So it normally goes up, but when it goes up that much, that shows you how much money the league is making. And it also
here.
Yeah.
We've got that seriously.
Which is great because there's a lot of needs, like we were saying for the Eagles. All right. So So you mentioned the linebacker position, and we had somebody in here talk about the Georgia players. All right, when you look at them individually, all right, I know the group. It was like, oh, well, Georgia has a historic college defense. Let's get the best players from that defense. It felt like that. I don't know if that's what they said or it just ended up working out like that. The Kobe Dean coming in the last season, I had as a big question mark, and I had said I can't say like they're going to give him every chance to be the starter and to be the guy, and I hope he is. But I can't say that I think or I know that that's going to work out. And after another year, and he was injured last year, I still didn't see a whole heck of a lot to have me believe that he's a guy that you can count on to be your Jeremiah Trotter or a guy that can go in there, even if it's just 2 downs and he's not out there all 3 downs. Although today you really kind of need that, he hasn't shown to me that you can count on him to be a difference-making starting linebacker in this league. Starting with the Kobe Dean, do you believe that? Or do you agree with me?
He's solid, but I think when we start talking about difference making linebackers in this new league, you have to be able to impact the passing game or disrupt an offensive passing game. And whether it be his height or his measurables or whatever, he's not going to do that. Will he disrupt the run? Will he get a ton of tackles for loss? He'll do that. He's still going to need a running mate, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so Jalen Carter, and he slowed down as many rookies do towards the tail end of the season. He was the favorite for rookie of the year for almost the entire season, and then he lost it late. And then you have Jordan Davis, and I had heard Brian Baldinger late in the season say that he was out of shape, and he was surprised that he was even playing with how he was out of shape. But then I also remember a play where, and I forget who it was against. It was late in the season.
Josh Allen in Buffalo, I think.
The Josh Allen play. And recently some video came out of the players on the Bills sidelines that were looking at Jordan Davis, and they were looking at him like, what the hell was that? How does a guy that big run that fast and more or less chase down one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the NFL? They're looking at him like, but consistency, I think, is what you're looking for from Jordan Davis. And it's more difficult to see when you're getting a non-pass rusher on the defensive line because you're not seeing the quarterback pressures, you're not seeing the sacks, you're not seeing the splash plays. How would you evaluate Jordan Davis so far? And has the pick lived up to your expectation?
Not really. I mean, when you start to talk about who went after him, no, that's where you become disgruntled because Kyle Hamilton and others went after him. Is he a solid player? Yes. Would you like him to become Dexter Lawrence or someone like that? Yes. And he's not there yet. So it becomes a situation where you start saying, well, did these guys just dominate at Georgia because it was 20 guys at every position and they just overwhelmed people? So if we're going to stack the Eagles defense to the point where they can swarm and overwhelm, then that's fine. But if he can't go more than 30, 40 snaps, snaps per game, then at that point it becomes a concerning problem, or at least be efficient for those 25 to 30 snaps per game.
Yeah. And this he's been in 2 years now. You don't want to start looking ahead to the next contract, but Howard Roseman's always looking ahead. Is a nose tackle that doesn't get pressure on the quarterback, is he worth the $15 to $20 million a year that by Christ in 3 years or 4 years going, how much are these players going to be making if the cap goes up by $30-40 million a year?
Right.
They're going to be making even more money.
You'll be talking about giving a Jordan Davis, who, if he doesn't pan out and he's just an average player, probably $20 million a season at that point, 25. And now you're talking about a guy who's rich. You're already talking about him struggling with his weight and things like that. What are we going to do now when he
gets paid
a season, right? And he can really eat steak and all those things every day. So those are just things to think about in terms of how you're going to continue to construct a roster and build around him.
I will say Nolan Smith, disappointing rookie year, but no reason to believe that he's going to be a bust, right? Rookie year, I think he was banged up a little bit early. He's undersized. He's one of these guys that I think needed this rookie year to kind of be like, all right, now I think I got it figured out. Now he goes into the offseason knowing what to expect. Now he goes into training camp knowing what to expect. Not everybody comes in their rookie season and kills it. And even coming from Georgia, high-profile program, I'm not ready to say because I still like the potential. I remember Jeremiah Trotter, his rookie year, and Ike tells the story of it because he came into the league with him. But rookie year, I remember after his rookie year thinking, man, I don't even know if this guy can play in the league. He barely even got on the field. He was inactive for a lot of the games. And you saw right off the bat in year 2 from Trot that the dude was a beast and he could play. So I'm hoping year 2 for Nolan is you're gonna open your eyes and say like, all right, as far as a rotational pass rusher, a guy with a high motor who actually plays the run really well as well, at least he did in college. I think you're going to get more productive snaps from Nolan Smith in 2024. They're going to need him.
I think so. I think you'd like to see him take those same steps Josh Sweat took when he got here. So 4 sacks next year would be amazing. You would like to see him continue to build. I think if he bulks up, you allow him to be a pass rusher. You don't drop him in coverage. At worst, he's Hassan Reddick, 8 or 9 sacks a season. So I think that's what you want to see from him. I think he just needs more snaps. He needs more reps. But he was another guy at Georgia where he wasn't always a full-time starter, and he battled injuries too. So it becomes a situation again where are we just going off the eye test, or it's just a situation where they were overwhelming people, and now that they're here and they kind of have to do things alone and separate, what's going to happen with them? Like, I think Jalen Carter is going to be a star. The other two, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure you want them to just be rotational pieces where you drafted them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Jalen Carter's the real deal and a stud. You do also worry about when he does become even more of a star, because that was the book on him in Georgia, was didn't take coaching well.
Right.
All the kind of off the field stuff as far as that you worry about. But I've no doubt this dude is a beast when he's on the field. All right. So I guess the big question, then you talk about free agency and Howie is trying to upgrade the team with salary cap dollars, but also we know it's Howie season and he likes to make deals. If you remember before the trade deadline, Jalen Johnson of the Bears was at least reportedly available because he was set to be a free agent. He hadn't signed with the Bears. So real or not, there was talk out there that the Eagles were sniffing around about him. And then Patrick Surtain, who the Eagles tried to trade up and get, and the Broncos weren't having it, that name's surfaced out there. And I don't know if that makes any sense for Denver to do. But it brings me to, I wonder if Howie is going to try to use that second round draft pick that they got from the Saints in that trade a couple years ago. So the Eagles have 2 twos this year. Is he going to try to use draft capital to go out and shore up the cornerback position? We talked before about Darius Slay. I'm just doing some dot connecting. Howie was sniffing around for guys that aren't 30 years old, that are really on that second contract or going into their second contract. So he'll pay a premium price to get a younger player in here and then have him for the next 6 or 7 years. He just showed it with A.J. Brown. The Eagles struggled to draft and develop wide receivers. Devontae's working out well, but still, that's the reason they brought in A.J. from a lot of misses. And the same thing with the cornerback position. They have not been able to draft and develop a corner, with the exception of Jalen Mills, in a really, really long time. So does Howie go out and try to buy one before he gets to free agency and get the job done? Do you think Howie is going to be active draft day, trade market, using some of the extra draft picks to try to get some veteran players in here?
I would. I would try to be active now. I'm not sure if he could do it, but if you can use that too, and you can get Surtain, and you don't have to give L'Jarius Sneed $20-25 million, then you do that. So from that standpoint, yeah, if you can buy yourself or trade like you did with Swift last year for a younger cornerback that's been impactful, that has Pro Bowl, All-Pro potential, you do that. But other than that, if that doesn't happen, then yeah, during the draft, you still try to do that, because like I said, I think you need another corner, you need a linebacker, and you need a safety. Now, if you can reverse fortunes and get C.J. Gardner-Johnson to come back, and you can push Bradbury out the door, that's fine too, but you need to address those two positions.
All right, all else being equal, not knowing who will be there and who won't be there at pick number 22 when the Eagles come up to draft, where are you looking? What do you believe is the highest priority for this team in round 1 and even round 2?
Well, he's not going to use the pick on a linebacker. I would. That's how urgent I feel like the situation is. But if you're not going to do that, you either have to draft a safety or a cornerback.
Yeah. I mean, and they're always going to be in the market for an offensive lineman, because they'll say, well, we need a guard, and Lane's getting old. Lane's going to play for a couple more years. This idea that Lane might retire after next year, he's making too much damn money, and he's still very productive. Kelsey, I'd be shocked if he comes back and he doesn't retire. I'd be absolutely floored. So Cam Jurgens moves over to center. Here's my thing. If you can't find a starting guard, either through your pipeline that was a mid-round draft pick or somebody from free agency, you can't afford to pay every player or use high draft picks in every position on the offensive line. I know the Eagles spend a lot of money on the offensive line, as they should, and the defensive line. But if Jurgens is making a second round money, and Mailata's making money, and Lane Johnson's making money, at some point you need to have a guy that's not making a lot of money. So I'm not using a first round draft pick on an offensive guard.
I wouldn't
Sorry.
either. No, I wouldn't either. I think you moved Jurgens back to a center position. You drafted Tyler Steen in the third round to play guard, so you put him there. You can't use a first round pick on a guard. I mean, you could, but then at that point, you have to still pay Landon Dickerson, whether it's Fitzgerald or whatever. He's going to reset the market at his position anyway. So if you can slide Jurgens back to his natural position, have a second-year player at right guard next to Lane, you can kind of settle back in and save some cap space. So I agree with you.
What would you do at running back? Would you consider bringing Swift back, or would you bring Swift back? Kenny Gainwell is an organizational favorite. It doesn't seem like that he's going anywhere. Boston Scott, I don't know if he's going to be back for another year. Are you looking to upgrade the running back position, or did you like what there was there last year?
Swift is fine, but I think it's the same conversation when you start talking about the linebacker position. Is he going to give DeAndre Swift $4 million minimum, $5 million at least, to play the running back position? As of the last 4 or 5 years, that's not the case. So if you're not going to do that, then I'd like you to use a high draft pick, first or second round, on a really talented running back or a dual threat running back. But I feel like they're more likely to go running back by committee based off of, having Kellen Moore and based off of what he was able to do in Dallas. And at this point, you can just kind of get any running back to slide in there if you have a really good offensive line. And that's what we've been banking on anyway.
Glenn Erby is the managing editor of the Eagles Wire. And how long have you been doing the Ravens stuff as well? Semi-recently, right?
Right. Just finished the first season doing it.
Oh, look at you.
Trying.
All right. You can follow him on Twitter. It's at the cover, the number 2 NFL, at the cover 2 NFL. And man, is he on top of every move that happens with the Eagles. I'm assuming he's doing the same thing for the Ravens. So let me just ask you quickly about the Ravens, because one of the things I loved about doing national radio was I could talk about all the NFL teams and cities. And Lamar Jackson was a hot button topic. And in my national show, I had a lot of listeners in Baltimore because they wanted to talk about Lamar Jackson when it looked like he wasn't coming back and when he ended up re-signing. But how much of the failures of the Ravens in the playoffs deserve to go on Lamar Jackson? In other words, them not making the Super Bowl this year, how much of that do you put on Lamar Jackson?
He gets his share, but I think if anything, he gets about 35%. But in terms of them not running the ball and the gang of things they did in that loss to Kansas City, the defense still only gave up 7 points in the second half or 0 in the second half, I think. So I think offensively, more about offensive coordinator Todd Monken, a lack of weapons. He gets his share for throwing that dumb pick in the triple coverage. But other than that, he had an outstanding season. He'll come back with Monken. He should be even better. I wrote about it yesterday. So he'll continue to grow.
Yeah, he was outstanding. My takeaway from the game was that Steve Spagnuolo had an unbelievable game plan of what they're going to do to Lamar Jackson. They're going to take away the intermediate passes, and they're going to make him hold the ball and throw it deep. And the fact that the Ravens refused to run the ball made them one-dimensional. I mean, they played right into the hands of the Chiefs. And I mean, man, that Chiefs defense is really good. Spagnuolo's done a really good job, and they have a ton of young talent on there. So it's not going to get any easier for the Ravens. I was disappointed because I'm a Lamar fan, and I thought this could be the year that they finally break through. Their talent on offense was a little bit different. It was a little bit better. They actually had better than pedestrian wide receivers, although Mark Andrews was injured towards the end of the season. They still need to get better talent for him. I mean, it was nice that Odell had a good season. Who am I missing here? That's their other wide receiver. That's Zay Flowers.
Yeah, Zay Flowers.
And Zay Flowers looks like a real player, and Bateman, I still don't know. But this is the NFL. Having one offensive weapon isn't enough anymore. You need better skill guys, and I feel like the Ravens need better skill guys.
Yeah, I think they need a guy on the outside with size. They can definitely enhance the offensive line. I mean, we were just talking about the Eagles, the fact that they were able to do what they were able to do, lead the NFL in rushing with that patchwork offensive line where they were subbing, offensive tackles, had guys on the snap count, things of that nature. So if they can get some stability on the offensive line, get another playmaker on the outside, they'll be fine. Defensively, they're stout at every position.
All right, free agency starts in like 2 weeks. Is it the
You can start tampering March 11th, and then in between March 11th and the 13th, guys will start agreeing to deals. But the new league year starts March 13th, and we're off from there.
March 11th, legal tampering? All right, so listen, we'll get you on leading up to free agency, and then we'll be reading you until then. Glenn Erby, the Eagles Wire. Check out everything that he does. If you're anything that happens with the Eagles, I don't even know. You don't even have. But do you have anybody that works with you? Every story that I see is you in the middle of the night, weekends, holidays.
I got Ravens Wire contributors. In terms of the Eagles Wire, that's all me. So like you say, fresh 3:30 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, regardless. Phone's right there.
Oh, my man, Glenn, thanks, dude. Good to see you. Good to talk to you.
Appreciate you, legend. Thank you very much.
All right, man. There he is, the pride of Upper Moreland High School, Glenn Erby, my graduating class, which is almost impossible that we went to the same high school, a small high school, by the way. I think we definitely had under 200 in our graduating class. But anyway, good to get an update with Glenn. Wanted to jump on and talk some Eagles because the hour that we do at night, we can't, I can't roll up my sleeves and really dig into some in the weeds Eagles conversation, which is what I really like to do. But anyway, thanks for everybody for joining us. We'll be back at 9:00 tonight. Subscribe at John Marks Media. That's on YouTube, and follow on all the socials. What else is going on today? Is I have people on here. There's some talk in here on in the chat about WIP afternoons. Is this the Wooder boy? Is this the Wooder boy from formerly of Crossing Broad that was on here? Well, listen, of course I'm missed on WIP afternoons. I'm an extremely gifted radio personality, so of course I missed. But it's still a very good show. I still tune in. I know Spike was ringing the bell last night down at the Wells Fargo Center, which is very cool. So so I'm tuning into the fellas. Not a lot, but when I go to the parent pickup line to pick up my kids from school, I'll get them on the drive over for a couple minutes, and then they tell me to turn it off when they get in the car. So there you go. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you tonight at 9:00. And have a great afternoon. And if you're just watching this not live, well, again, subscribe at John Marks Media on YouTube and everywhere else. See you.